Hi everybody, Professor Rad here, and today we're going to wrap up section 4D with mixed practice with the distributive, commutative, and associative properties. So let's get started on this example. We want to identify whether each equation is going to have the associative property, the commutative property, or the distributive property. So let's work through just a reminder of what each of these properties are. So the associative property says that you can change your grouping. In other words, whatever's on the inside of the parentheses is going to change. The commutative property says that you can change the order. So if you have 5 plus 3, the commutative property says that that's the same as 3 plus 5. Just like when you commute to work, really, right? If you start at home and drive to work, or if you start at work and drive to home, it's pretty much the same distance either way. That's what the commutative property is about. And then lastly, we have the distributive property. So the distributive property is when you have a number outside parentheses and you distribute it to things on the inside that are being added or subtracted together. So when we go to identify what property is being displayed, we want to identify what has changed. Have the groups changed? Has the order changed? Or does it look like something's been distributed rather? So let's look at part A here. We have 8 times 15 on the left and 15 times 8 on the right. So it looks like the order of the two numbers has changed. So since the order's changed, that means this is going to be demonstrating the commutative property. Let's look at part B. We have 8 plus 15 plus 6 in parentheses, and then we have 8 plus 15 plus 6. So if I look at what's changed, it looks like the first two numbers are grouped here, and that's an 8 and a 15. And over here, we have a 15 and a 6. So the things that are inside the parentheses have changed. So that means our groups have changed. So this is the associative property. Let's take a look at part C. I've got quite a few here, huh? So for part C, let's see what's changed. So we have 6 times 15 plus 8, and then we have 8 plus 6 times 15. Now, I might be tempted to say associative because I see parentheses, but it doesn't matter if I see parentheses or not. I've got to see what has changed. So the 6 times 15 and the 6 times 15 are the same things in the parentheses on either side. So that hasn't changed. What has changed is this side started out with thing plus 8, and now it is 8 plus thing. So the order has changed. And when the order changes, that means we have the commutative property. Very sneaky, huh? All right, let's take a look at part D. Again, I have parentheses, but now we know we need to be a little careful when we see them. Can't just jump to associative. And in fact, this one looks kind of weird. So we have the 15 plus 6 together in the parentheses here. And on the right-hand side, we have just individual numbers. What I am noticing, that's a big difference between the right and the left, is on the left-hand side, 8 was written only once. And on the right-hand side, 8 has been written twice. That's because this 8 has been distributed to the 15 and to the 6. So because there's been some distributing, that means this is the distributive property. All right, let's take a look at part E. We have 4 times 10 times 8 and 4 times 10 times 8. Okay, so let's see what has changed. Let's check those parentheses, see if they're the same or different. So on the left-hand side, the 4 and the 10 are grouped, and on the right-hand side, it's the 10 and the 8. So the numbers that are in the parentheses have changed. So the groups have changed, which means this one is the associative property. And for a last example, we've got 2 and then 10 minus 3 in parentheses. And on the right-hand side, I don't have any parentheses. So it does look like this 2 is showing up twice on the right-hand side. And it's once next to the 10 and once next to the 3. So it looks like I distributed the 2 to the 10 to get 2 times 10, and the 2 to the 3 to get 2 times 3. So this is the distributive property. Now these properties are the kind of thing that the more, the more often you work with them, the easier they will become to spot. But especially when we're first learning them, everything is tricky when you first learn it. Well, not everything, but lots of things are. So we want to make sure we get in lots of practice in identifying these different identities or these different properties. So I've got some practice for you here. So you want to identify whether each of these equations is an example of the associative, commutative, or distributive property. And remember, with the associative property, you're going to be changing the groups, the items that are in the parentheses. The commutative property, you're going to be changing the order of the items. And the distributive property looks like you take the number outside and the other numbers that had been inside end up getting that number as well. In the next video, we'll talk about a couple of other identities and properties, specifically the identity and inverse. I'm looking forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day.